Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. The second week of qualification matches for the CDL is about to begin, but OpTic have exposed all the inconsistencies behind the CDL's ruling last weekend over their match against the Rokkr, stating they intended to forfeit just the map 3 control. The CDL said no, you've got to give up the entire series, before changing their mind about 15 minutes later for a reason we might well discover over the coming minutes. Very much enjoy your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you are new as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. It really helps out the channel. Thank you very much indeed for doing that one. Plenty to dive into today. First of all, this from the Seattle Surge, bringing back their search and destroy analyst from last season in Equip. He's going to rejoin them for another year. All the teams now are expanding their staff. So, makes sense because most teams now, they've got the coach, they've got the analyst. They might even have a search guy as well. That's what Surge are planning to do. And of course, they play London today. A very good search and destroy team as it stands in the title. We'll see what happens with the weapon meta though and how that might affect London later on today, because Methods and Vegas and these other teams have been heavily involved in those discussions about wanting the M4 to stay in the game. Doug St. Martin has certainly wanted the M4 gone for quite some time now. He's finally got his wish. The M4 is out. The Scar is now going to be the main weapon that we see played tonight and possibly for the rest of the season, unless the Scar gets banned as well, which might still be the case. But look, pros seem to think this new meta is somewhat better than the previous one, but no guarantees it's going to be anything like Black Ops 4 when you had, okay, it was 5 players per team, but usually 2 Sorgs, 2 Maddoxes and an ICR. Sometimes you'd have a couple of ICRs, a couple of Maddoxes, 1 Sorg. It really was a great time back then. Even one of the AK weapons, whatever it was called then, was viable in competitive for a time. There was so many different things you could do, but yeah, Trek just do it different, unfortunately. Now, this I thought was really interesting from Mack here. So he comes out with a list of which teams use the M4 the most, and therefore theoretically could get hurt most by this M4 ban. So the 3 teams that use the highest percentage here were London at almost 90%, then Boston, then OpTic, loads of teams in the mid-pack here, and then the bottom ones actually are Los Angeles Guerrillas, using the Vaznev almost 40% of the time for their kills. Depends a bit on what maps they're playing on, and I think LAG wanted the M4 to stay, maybe just because they didn't want the meta to change before the major came around, which is probably an understandable reason. But yeah, is this going to affect London? Are you now going to start seeing these teams use the Vaznev more often, or will you see London double down on this, which seems to be the case, because Kenny adds another name to his list of teams that he's snitching on. Toronto only on some hills. CleanX says wait till you see London, they've still got 4 Scars on every single map. So yeah, I guess that's what they want to go for going forwards. Vegas is running 4 too. So yeah, we might still see the Scar be very prevalent for certain teams. Seems like London and even Vegas is still running a lot of Scars on the map, and that might still be the way to go right now. And even Zero admits himself here that yeah, the number 3 team on Kenny's list should be London, because they're running like 4 on most maps right now, London. So yeah, maybe it's not going to change the meta too much. I do think the Scar is a more fun weapon to watch, at least than the M4, so maybe there's a slight benefit there. And from what Scump said last night, we are seeing some more SMGs in play. Just certain teams either are refusing to adapt to the new meta, the way that the new meta might be played out, or they're just going to see how it goes with the ARs still being dominant. Even Kenny admits this new meta is pretty fun, despite the fact that, they were instrumental in trying to keep the M4 in the game. The meta indeed did not change, but the option to run 3 ARs or 2 subs for full maps is now viable. So, Sasha's like, well, so the meta did change then, right? Because, okay, we're still seeing most of the time more ARs than SMGs, more Scars than Vaznevs, but he's like, well, yeah, you can now use 2 subs for full maps more often than not. So, yeah, most teams are still running the old meta, but it does mean on certain occasions this is for the better. Let's dive into a very interesting thing, actually, that the Call of Duty League has come out with. Not this, some weird partnership with Hummer, but actually this with, well, talking about the watch parties. So for the first weekend of Major 1, it was an absolute free-for-all, right? Anyone log on, get your watch party on, watch the broadcast, it's all good. Now, I think most broadcasts, they have more restrictions on the co-streaming and the watch partying, right? Like in Valorant and stuff, they approve certain people to do the watch parties, and there's certain guidelines on what they should do when watching the broadcast, which is understandable, to be fair. But yeah, I guess for this weekend, it's still a kind of a free-for-all, but for the Major 1 and then beyond, they're going to have applications, and then you've got to submit your application, get approved, and then you can do it as long as you follow the guidelines. So this is the website. If you guys want to apply for this, like, feel free. It's open to all, but be aware of the rules here. So basically, you're never allowed to turn the broadcast off. It's got to be on there the whole time, such that they can show, their sponsors that it was on more eyes than just on their broadcast and stuff. Got to be on Twitch. The sponsored segments must still be there, can't be cut away from. You've got to have the broadcast on the entire time. You can't run ads during the broadcast. broadcast and this type of stuff. Like, you know, obviously they can decide to not allow someone to watch party if they want to do it at a particular time. So, yeah, I'm sure Zoom will still be doing it and all that type of stuff. I actually did look in more detail at the guidelines here because it goes into even more depth. And one that I thought was quite funny, actually, was this line here. Watch party hosts must refrain from disparaging the CDL, its affiliates, or their respective sponsors, products, or services. So pretty funny, really, right? Because let's say you're on a watch party, the CDL do something stupid, and you know, you say, well, that was a stupid decision. Unlucky, there goes your watch party, right? So look, we'll just see that there's plenty of rules. They also, another rule here that's further down is that the players that are doing the watch parties or whoever's doing the watch party, you can't upload that VOD to any other service, basically. So I guess it makes sense that CDL wants only the VODs to be available on their channel, on their YouTube channel. But yeah, still, it's quite a delay in actually getting those uploaded. I know that Zoomer and Vals and stuff, they've been working on the match will finish. They'll upload Zoomer's watch party onto YouTube. That won't be possible anymore. So that's just one thing to mention here. Like, I understand that the intention of doing the necessary parts of these guidelines and all this, but I don't know, maybe the guidelines go a bit too far. I kind of enjoyed the free fall that we had last weekend. I'm sure the pros can still, you know, finish their stream, turn up and turn on the stream and watch the broadcast, but they've got to be a bit more careful now the way they do their watch parties. I don't really think too much is going to change, but yeah, we'll see how things develop over the coming days. Speaking of the CDL though, of course, the big talking point of this time last week was the OpTic versus Rokkr forfeit match. OpTic have now finally come up with their discussion on it and talked about how everything went down behind the scenes. Rambo with a really interesting perspective here. Hex also goes off on an absolute mad one. Like, he has a couple of great rants in here actually about the frustration of year 4 of the league, things not getting fixed, and you know, really the forfeit from OpTic was not just for that particular moment, but really a culmination of the last several years, right? The frustrations of the lack of developer support, the fact that this bug is a thing in the first place, hasn't been solved. They let the CDL know, they let the developers know, at least try to, that this is a problem, and then it turns up to the first major qualifiers and it happens already. So that's where the frustration stemmed from, not just because of this specific instance and Rambo's evident frustration with Rokkr and what he perceives as their lack of competitive integrity by pushing hard for a replay, knowing full well, in his opinion, that he didn't have any, you know, base to do exactly that. But not just that situation, but also the fact that the game is now in the state that it's been after the last several years of all the investments they've made, and that's really why they felt so frustrated with the forfeit. But the other point is that they weren't intending to forfeit the entire series. They just wanted to forfeit map 1 or map 3, sorry, the control that, you know, they didn't want to replay the round. They're like, okay, whatever, stupid rule, let's just go on to map 4. The CDL said, no, not allowed to do that. If you don't play this map, you've got to forfeit the entire match, before then changing their mind. And he also talks about the Envoy glitch that he got back at, I think it was Major 4, he says, champs, I think it was Major 4 last season, the pistol ladder glitch on Bakaj that wasn't replayed. He reckons that there's certain levels of glitches, so it's kind of like arbitrary. The CDL just makes up their mind when they want, and then they change their mind on the replay ruling 15 minutes later.
Basically like a low level bug or a high level bug. Okay. And I guess the league is kind of the ones to interpret what is what. So in this case, they interpreted that the bug was big enough, was a larger bug enough to where they was a demand a replay. And I would assume, I mean, again, this is me more assuming, not really facts, but I would assume they would held that the other bug that happened to where it wasn't big enough to replay it around. Which then, like, for me, it's like, well, like, I'm arguing this, obviously I'm having a discussion in the league while all this is going on about like why do I want explanations? Like, I'm not just going to sit here and take it. And like the explanations they're giving us is not really anything ample. They're just saying like, this is how it is. So for us, that was really where the frustration lied, and like how the players kind of fell into that loophole of just, it was like annoying at first. And then everything about it was just to like race to the max. And then the players, I mean, I don't want to speak for them because, again, this is kind of like on camera. But for myself, like, I was more disappointed at Rokkr than the league, to be honest. Because it's like, there's a competitive integrity to all this, right? Like we're competitors. We all want to win. We all want to do what's best. Like, if they were in our shoes, there's zero way in hell they would feel the same way they'd feel about that situation. Like, even like Brian saying, their coach tweeted saying there was 15 seconds left of the round. There wasn't. Like, there was 8 seconds. Like, Attach said, well, he didn't mean to call that streak, but he did. Like, it's like, I understand he didn't mean to call it. Right. In a world where there's no bug, he probably takes his iPad out, puts his back, and then goes and calls other streak, which wouldn't matter anyways, goes to the point and dies. Like, but it's like they're just kind of batting an eye to that and just saying like there was still a chance, and they're using kind of like, I guess there is technically a rule that says like whatever they're entitled to this, I guess, clear because it happened. But it's just more so like from a competitive experience standpoint, like, again, now what stops anyone from doing this in the future? Yeah. So the players are basically kind of down the rabbit hole and like, hey, like, we don't want to replay this map. Like, let's move on to the next map. And we were told we can't. We were told that if you forfeit this, you have to forfeit the entire match. And we're like, what? Like, that What world does that make sense?
Wow.
Like the last words I said to the people in charge was that we're not going to replay. And then nothing was said after that for 15 minutes. And then they came back and said, like, I mean, during this 15 minutes, everyone's just like going even darker and darker and darker. At this point, there's no light. Like, it's just, we're far, like, it's whatever, full darkness.
Literal demon hours.
Yeah, like, everyone's just like totally revolving around this, being more and more pissed. These guys start tweeting and all that stuff. So, and then they come back like 15 minutes later and tell us, never mind, you can forfeit that map and then you can play the rest of the match out, which to me was like,
we're making the rules up as we go along.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it just seems super.
No.
So Rambo and the guys obviously understandably frustrated with the CDL, but also the Minnesota Rokkr themselves for, you know, what he perceives as effectively trying to say that they had a good chance to win, whereas the reality is, I think we've looked at the data and the statistics and the replays, and that like the chance to win was definitely much lower than 1%. I think there's no doubt about that one. Now this from Doc V again, this guy's absolutely killed it, man. He's gone through and summarized like a lot of the things that were said, because I can't share the entire 30-minute segment, but I would encourage you guys to check it out because the first 30 minutes of the podcast is absolute fire. But I shared the bit on Rambo because I thought that was probably the most interesting stuff that we haven't heard before. So first of all, why is this rule in place that the teams, if you forfeit one map, you have to forfeit the entire series? Don't know why that's necessary in the first place. You can understand that OpTic were like, yeah, whatever, like let's just go map 4 and keep going, because Formal even mentioned that like he probably just would have replayed, right? Because like obviously if you replay, the community's still going to have your back no matter what. If you lose, then obviously the community is going to have your back and the other team are going to look bad. And if you win, then the other team are looking even worse. And it's still better practice, right? So I can understand why, you know, but the frustration was building behind the scenes. They were not happy about it. We know that Scump, we know that Dashy were not that happy, you know, buddies about the situation, right? And what, 15 minutes had passed. There was no communication from the league. And then they come out and say, actually, yeah, guys, if you want to replay, go from map 4, basically, then you can. So why did they change their mind here? Why are these rules just made up on a whim? Because it's quite clear from what the CDL have said as a result of this, and even Daniel Science stuff, that they didn't want the forfeit to occur. They didn't want the free victory to happen for Rokkr. Like, and they were trying to, like, that's why I imagine the delay was so lengthy on the broadcast, because, like, I think they already knew what they were going to do. OpTic knew they weren't going to replay that map, that the ruling had been set, that it was technically a replay. So why did it take like an hour to get the match started? Presumably, and we guessed at the time, maybe the CDL was talking to OpTic, being like, please keep playing, we don't want you to forfeit, all this stuff. So, and apparently maybe that was the case, right? And this is where it gets even worse, I think, for the league, because if it wasn't OpTic in this situation, let's say it was the other way around, OpTic were the team that had accidentally called in the SCE. I still do think it was accidental from Cammy's side, but let's say the shoe was on the other foot, and Rokkr were the ones saying, you know what, the ruling's stupid, let's just go to map 4. The CDL say, no, Rokkr, you can't do that, you've got to forfeit the series. Would they have come back 15 minutes later and said, hey, Rokkr, actually, we can continue for map 4 if you want? Or was this decision only done because it's OpTic, it's the biggest team, it's the fan favourite team? Of course, it doesn't affect OpTic in this case, but does make you wonder about these inconsistencies. Did the CDL only change their minds because they wanted the biggest team, the biggest fan base, to not lose in this manner and wanted them to keep going? And I think fair play for OpTic saying, you know what, screw this, it's just ridiculous. Like, we're just going to take the L regardless and show up what an absolute shambles this was on day 1. Thankfully, day 2 and day 3 got better. But yeah, what do you think the reason was for them changing their mind? Because I guess they looked at the rules and realized, yeah, I guess if you forfeit a map, you've got to forfeit the series. Maybe those rules are stupid, and then maybe they broke them just because it's OpTic. I don't know, but you know, I think OpTic still did the right thing on this, right? And the fact that they did means we're still talking about it to this day, and hopefully some of these issues can get resolved going into the future. Let's talk then about the matches for today. 4 games tonight, as they will be for the next 3 days. So this is honestly a really difficult day to call. Surge Ravens. So London 2-0 so far. Surge not looking so hot. Ravens Search and Destroy is really good. Want to see how it goes with this new meta though. I think I'm going to take like London 3-2 maybe. Kind of tough to call. Florida Rokkr as well. Interesting series. I do think the Rokkr probably 3-1 in this one. Then Subliners Guerrillas. Like, this could be the battle of the worst team in the league. I think I'm going to take Guerrillas in 5, but I really don't know. I don't really trust anything about the Subliners in their Search and Destroy, but they could easily just turn up and slay LAG off the face of the earth, which is also a viable possibility as well. So, like, I don't know how to call that one. It's kind of a coin toss to me. And then we've got Ultra versus FaZe, right? Which is always a cracking series in COD history. Now a new look Ultra team, a FaZe, which probably should still be favourites, and I think I'm going to pick them. But yeah, Scrappy versus FaZe, that is going to be fireworks. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.